Where I go, you're changing a tire, and the lug nut rolls out into the road. You arrive to church late, and I ask you why you're late. You say, well, I was coming here, and the tire got flat, and when I was changing it, the lug nut rolled out of my hand, it rolled in the middle of the road, and I wasn't thinking, and I went out there and picked it up, and when I picked it up and stood up 5 feet in front of me, there was a logging truck weighing 30 tons going like 120 miles an hour, and it ran me over, and that's why I'm late. And I go, anybody who says that, there's only two possibilities. He's a liar, or he's gotten picking out of his mind. You know that's true. How can you have an encounter with a logging truck and not be changed? Now what's bigger, a logging truck or God? Having an encounter with God, although a person's conversion differs from person to person, different things happen, and we need to be very, very careful how we judge a person's conversion. But to assume that a man can have an encounter with the living God in conversion and it not create something of a crisis leading to change is absolutely absurd. One of the greatest illustrations of repentance in the entire body, in the entire Bible, is the Apostle Paul. Now I want you to think about this. Paul heads off to Damascus, and as he's going down the road, he believes that Jesus Christ is the greatest, or the person named Jesus is the greatest blasphemer that Israel has ever known. He believes that the Christians are vile vermin and ought to be extinguished in the name of God. He has an encounter with the risen Lord. Now, I want you to know what happened to this man. You remember that 3 days afterwards, he sat in the dark. He did not eat or drink. He was totally blind. And that represents something very important to us. What is repentance? It's when your entire reality has been disintegrated, pulverized. Do you realize that in one moment the Apostle Paul came to understand that absolutely everything he believed about reality was wrong? Was wrong. And that's why he sat there 3 days without drink, without food. I mean, it's like you waking up one morning and finding out that you have been living in something of a matrix or a parallel universe, and everything you believed was completely wrong. When a person has an encounter with God, although there are varying degrees, and although some people have an encounter with God at the very beginning of their conversion, it's rather dramatic. Others, more of an encounter as the work of sanctification continues in their life. But the more you have encounter, the more that you are drawn into this God, the greater the crisis. And in that crisis, the more you're going to see how wrong you are. And the more you're going to see what's right. It seems that what we're doing now is just saying to people, if I'm ever in your congregation and you do this, I don't know what I'll do. But this is what I hear preachers saying all the time. You know, you got a great life, you got a great job, a great education, you got a great wife, great kids, wonderful, beautiful home in the suburbs. Everything is going right for you. But I'm here to tell you today something really, really radical. You just lack one other thing, and that's a relationship with Jesus Christ. I want you to know that's blasphemy. That is blasphemy. The proper way of saying it is this: sir, you have nothing. Your job, your life, your education, all of it is rot. Because without Jesus Christ, your entire life is null. It is nothing. You must have Christ or you shall have nothing, sir. Jesus is not the cherry on the top of an already great life. Christ comes into a person's life, and there is a crisis where that person realizes everything I've ever thought, everything I've ever lived for is wrong. And I must now submit and learn to walk with a new Lord. And that's what we can see here with this Isaiah. I mean, here is a man that tradition tells us that he was later on martyred, that he was sawn in two with a wooden saw. I mean, he's a dedicated man. And yet when he comes into the presence of this God, there is a crisis. When John the Beloved comes into the presence of Christ in the book of Revelation, there is a crisis. It's not to say that the Lord cannot come to us in a whisper. It's not to say that the Lord can't come to us and fill us with joy and cause us to dance. But if we know nothing about crisis in our Christianity, nothing about a confrontation with this God that overpowers us, then something is terribly wrong. And I'll tell you what it is, or at least I'll tell you where the wrongness begins. It begins with our ignorance of God. This is tremendous what happens to this man. And then, as R.C. Sproul so points out so wonderfully, you have this idea that, so now, you know, he says, I'm a man of unclean lips, so one of the seraphim flew to me with a burning coal in his hand, which he had taken from the altar with tongs. He touched my mouth with it and said, Behold, this has touched your lips, and your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is forgiven. And you think, oh, that is so beautiful. So beautiful? Go out to your grill in the backyard, fill it full of coals, and when it's red hot, stick your mouth on one of them. There's nothing beautiful about this. I mean, think about what's being said. The most tender part of your body. Your lips, and a coal that a seraphim has to pick up with tongs. He comes over and goes, are you ready for your cleansing? It would be better, are you ready for your branding in the mouth? R.C. Sproul says that coal must have hit his mouth, and his mouth must have exploded. Pain and blisters and swelling. It was horrid. You're saying, why are you painting this picture? I am painting a picture of a God with whom you must deal, one with whom you must wrestle, one who will carry you as a father carries his child, and one who will wrestle you and touch your thigh and put your hip out of place. One who will break you into a million pieces to save you. One who will shatter your life like a hammer on glass and put you back together. And there's just scars everywhere. But in those different color panes of glass, beauty shines through.